let's talk about season 3, episode 10 of And Just Like That. First thoughts, summary thoughts. Oh my gosh. So they did have this in them all along, and they held out. They were holdouters all season long and made us wait until essentially the end of episode 9 to really begin to show us what we signed up for when we started watching this show. Episode 9, not a whole lot happened developmentally. Miranda and her girlfriend decided that they were going to be sober together, which I thought was really nice. In other big news, Seema and Adam decided to continue their relationship. They didn't drop that silly deodorant gag, but whatever. And most importantly, at the end of episode 9, Carrie and Aiden broke up. I could not have cheered any more loudly when they were standing there in the streets. My husband actually took note and started watching because I was talking to the television going, yes, yes, yes. And the only thing I was sad about with that breakup is that it took so long to happen. And I was glad to finally see a version of Carrie that resembled that Carrie that we knew from all the previous seasons and the movies, who did stand up for what she wanted, who did put herself first. I understand that they were letting her convey some guilt over having cheated on Aiden 1,000 years ago, but if he's back here at the table for more of what you're serving up, then he has to be over that too. And I just felt like she was wearing that guilt a little bit too much and for a little bit too long, and letting him get away with virtually everything under the sun that he did, including cheating on her, technically, because of that guilt. At some point, Carrie decides, you know what, enough's enough. I've put up with enough from this guy. He was so rude to her when she was out riding with Duncan. Duncan's a smoker. Duncan and Aiden had talked about cigar smoke and why he does it. And, we know from the seasons of Sex and the City that Aiden is very much not a smoker. And that was one of the points of contention with him and Carrie, is that he pretty much forced her to quit, which is not the worst thing in the world. Obviously, it's good if somebody stops smoking because smoking is bad for your health. But again, it was just symbolic of the fact that Aiden and Carrie are not necessarily a natural fit for each other. So I feel like they brought that up for a reason, to remind us of the fact that they're not this wonder couple that just happened to magically fall apart, that there were always cracks in the relationship, even from the beginning. And I liked that. Duncan is a smoker, and that is a point of conflict for Carrie and Aiden, because Carrie comes back from their writing session after Aiden overstepped 1,000,000 times, trying to bring dinner and wine and interrupt their writing sessions in such a way that was so immature and gross. And finally, Carrie sends him on his way. Well, Aiden has a tantrum later on when Carrie comes to bed because she smells like smoke. So he doesn't like it. And he very rudely tells her in her own house to get away from him and go shower because she stinks. So I was really, really thinking they were going to make it Carrie just eat this. She has so many other insults that he's dealt her. And I was screaming, cheering at the TV when she didn't. When she was like, oh, okay, you want me to go away? I'll go away. And went and took up residence in a guest bedroom and decided to not sleep with him that night, and had some, you could tell she was having a good hard think about what he said to her and about what had been going on with him and Duncan and her and her boundaries for the last several days. That boils over to the end of the episode. They finally break up. It was a big payoff. There were a couple of other things, really important things that happened in that episode, like LTW having a crisis of conscience over the fact that her work is taking her away from her kids and her family so much. Her daughter is holding her to task about how much work she's doing, and it leads to a silly but at least likable interaction with a hamster in LTW's dream closet that ends up getting lost in said closet. Anyway, and in the end for LTW, Herbert loses the election, which I kind of saw as a predictable outcome, simply because it seemed like they were going to press this election as a way to create tension for them. I hope that he doesn't make the mistake of blaming her for losing the election, but I do feel like her awful mother-in-law is going to somehow make this her problem, because she's so wrapped up in her career that she doesn't have time to, support her little Herbert, her little Herbie, the way that maybe she would want Lisa to do. But either way, he seems to be taking it with disappointment, but not blaming it on her. Thankfully, Marion isn't in this episode at all, because I just hated that whole storyline. I didn't see any point to it. It wasn't really going anywhere useful. I think we are exactly where we need to be with LTW's story. in terms of the main conflict in her life, balancing career and motherhood and wifehood, and adding Marion to the mix when there wasn't really an issue in her marriage that we had identified besides her awful mother-in-law, felt a little confusing and like muddying the water. So I hope we let that whole Marion thing just be what it is. It was a stairway to a realization and move on. You know, I could identify with LTW about those moments where maybe you lose your temper as a mom and say or do something that, you know, in retrospect, you're like, that was a little harsh or that was a little overreactive because of the underlying feelings that are happening at the same time. But I love that, you know, at the end of the day, she's human. And Herbert, I love that even though her mother-in-law was extremely harsh on her for yelling at her daughter for letting the hamster out in her closet, Herbert wasn't. And Herbert is the only person whose opinion really matters in this situation, because he is the one who sees her mothering every day and sees what a good mother she is, and he reassures her. So I really liked that for them. But then he lost the election, so I don't know where they're going to take it. But either way, I like where they are right now in terms of storytelling, because episode 10 doesn't suck. We have a really crazy development for Miranda. Whoo, buddy. So Miranda finds out from Brady, who they finally allowed to join us along with Steve. They're having a little family dinner at Miranda's apartment, and Brady tells them he's going to culinary school, and everyone's celebrating. But before Steve and Miranda can actually celebrate for too long, he drops a bomb on them and lets them know that a baby is coming. A baby that he's having with a woman he is not in a relationship with, and that he didn't even know about until he accidentally, I guess, ran into her. What's clear to Brady is that the mother of the child didn't actually want him involved, and she was not planning to even let him know that a baby was on the way, except that they ran into each other, and she was very visibly pregnant. So Miranda asks a question that I think any mother of a young man would ask, which is, how are we sure that this baby is 100% yours if, you know, this is just a hookup and it wasn't a relationship? I think although it comes off harsh, it is the kind of question that a person like Miranda would ask. She's an attorney, right? So she's going to ask those kinds of questions before she lets her son sign up for a lifetime of child support payments or whatever may involve helping to raise this baby or not even be a part of this baby's life. But either way, she's going to ask that question. So I love that they made her ask that question. Brady gets miffed at that. And then Steve freaking loses it. I don't think we've ever seen Steve this mad. I didn't know Steve had it in him to get this mad because he always let Miranda get away with kind of being a jerk to him. But yeah, Steve pops his top and he pops off on Brady about how irresponsible it was, how he didn't have $2 to get a condom when he is a grown person and he doesn't even have the money to live on his own, or he thinks he's a grown person, he doesn't even have the money to live on his own, doesn't have the money to pay for anything. Where does he basically get off being so irresponsible? And I'm sure some people will take, you know, some kind of umbrage with his reaction and say that, you know, Brady didn't deserve that and that he threatened Brady and that was wrong. I loved every second of it because I thought it was so real. I don't know a single parent who would not react, at least on some level, in that way. In terms of being totally disappointed, frightened, shocked, ready to like burn down the apartment because you've invested so much in this kid, and now you see something approaching, a danger that may derail him for the rest of his life. The 20-year-old doesn't see it that way, but as his very grown 50-something parents, they do see it that way, and rightfully so. It's possible this woman may not want anything to do with Brady, but it's still messy as hell, the idea that they have a grandchild out there who doesn't have anything to do with Brady. So what's their role here? It's a very awkward and weird thing, and it was very irresponsible for him to put himself in this situation. The other thing I thought was really interesting that they kind of highlighted here is a generational divide between Brady, who is decidedly Gen Z, and his parents, who are decidedly Gen Xers, that they're so surprised that he's out here having like the promiscuous sex without condoms, because makes sense, right? People who grew up, Gen X people, were like in the throes in their adolescence of the AIDS epidemic. And now HIV and AIDS is something that certain kids of a certain age that I encounter, even as a healthcare provider, they're not worried about. HIV used to keep us up at night. The idea, like, someone's bodily fluids getting on you, like, do I have a paper cut? Oh my gosh, am I gonna die? Was like not an uncommon thought growing up in the 80s and 90s. And now, not an issue. Kids are like, oh, I take PrEP and they're done. So it's an interesting and unsurprising thing for Brady to be so casual about the use of condoms in this day and age, where his Gen X parents are completely outraged and gobsmacked that he would not stop to put on a condom. The later parts of the episode that deal with this, where Miranda goes to the salon and is trying to be undercover, a little gaggy, but also a little bit consistent with the original TV show, where they kind of did these funny, humorous things and injected comedy. So I didn't mind it. And it was also a moment for her and Charlotte to bond, talking about this important thing happening in her life. So I liked it. I love that she immediately called them on three-way, and they just had all these great friendship conversations packed into this episode, between the girls on the phone when Miranda found out about the pregnancy, to Charlotte and Miranda walking to the salon. Like, it just definitely felt genuine. If you're 50 something and you've got these lifetime best friends and you're in this scenario, who are you going to call as soon as you find out? You're going to call your BFFs. You're going to get them on a three-way call just like she did. I love that whole thing. They gave Miranda something to do that is realistic for a person in her 50s who has a 20-year-old kid and is living in New York City. I prefer this version of Miranda a lot more to what we were given before. What they did with Seema in this episode, I didn't particularly care for, but at least it was character development. For Adam, they gave us a reason to, know him a little more, care a little bit more about him. I didn't think he would be around this long, but if he is going to be around this long, then these are the details I did want to know. So he's got a beautiful rent-controlled apartment he grew up in that his mother, who is an artist, secured for them sometime in the 80s, I think, or 90s. And it's an enviable apartment. Like, you would probably kill someone to get that apartment. He explains to her he has this giant pothos plant in his window, and he explains to her how that plant represents his mother to him, who he lost to breast cancer. She was a naturalist, and it would appear that she did not pursue conventional medicine in the treatment of her breast cancer, and that cost her her life, sadly. So they have this really lovely conversation about his mother that I really enjoyed being a part of, and seeing him pour his heart out to her made me care about him so much more. It's this crazy thing about characters. When you actually develop them, then we actually care about them. And even though they do insert a gag and a funny here, with Seema eventually knocking the plant out the window and basically killing his mother, as she kept putting it, you could also insert eye roll here, but I enjoyed that they still used it to come back to a more serious character development point with her and Adam, and their relationship getting stronger because he was able to save parts of the plant and create a few new pots of the plant, and so the same plant will live on and on. Moving on to Charlotte. She's recovered, it seems, from her vertigo, and now she's renovating her apartment. The kids are rehearsing for a play. Harry's watching a game. Charlotte is trying to find a peaceful, quiet moment so she can enjoy a complimentary psychic cleansing session that she got from some school auction. So that's not going so great, because obviously it's not going to be quiet in that environment. And so most of the episode, or most of our time with Charlotte, is her trying to find a moment of peace. I didn't hate it, only because this is the life Charlotte asked for. She wanted, the wife role and the homemaker and the husband. And we've watched her have some ups and downs in this role, but now she's reached an equilibrium with her career and the kids and everything. And so I feel like it would be very normal for a woman in her position to seemingly like have it all, but also be very stressed by having it all. So I actually really liked this. I liked it because it felt real. It felt realistic. It felt in touch with what a woman of Charlotte's age might be dealing with. I'm sure there is some woman on the other side of the television screen who saw what Charlotte was feeling and was identifying very strongly with that. There is such a thing. It's a phenomenon of having it all and being stressing about your blessings, basically having the things you prayed for in life and then being stressed by all of the things that you have in your life that you prayed for. So that was very good. And then most importantly, that leads her to Carrie's house to seek peace and quiet, where they have the most beautiful conversation that has taken place in the entire season between two people, where Carrie expresses to her her hesitation about moving forward with any kind of romantic situation with Duncan for the reason that it feels like some kind of weird betrayal, or like Miranda was right and she just doesn't want to do that. And the conclusion from our dear Charlotte, who Charlotte's always kind of been that listening ear that they go to, that doesn't judge them, but does give them like firm, good advice. She basically says, F Miranda. This isn't Miranda's life. And Miranda's opinion about you ending up dating Duncan is not Carrie's business to be concerned about. And I agree. At another point in the episode, Carrie is sitting down to dinner with Seema, talking to her about Duncan. More good conversations. Yes. And she says something that really was stunning information to me, because this is someone who's been married, mind you, married to her dream guy, to our understanding. But she tells Seema that she feels seen in her friendship, her writing relationship, her professional relationship, her flirtation. She feels seen with Duncan more than she ever has in any other relationship. And I was like, wow, wow, wow. This is a woman who was married to someone. And she's saying right now in this friendship where he's a writer and she's a writer and they're bouncing all the ideas off of each other, and it's very cool, like what they're doing with each other, right? And she's saying is, I feel more seen, more understood, and more appreciated for my intellect in this relationship than I have in any relationship with any man in my entire life. I thought that was huge. I loved it. And I wish we had gotten more of that all season long. A little more development of that. This all feels like it's happening very suddenly, but I loved it. We got our Carrie back. The introspective Carrie who sits at the window and actually comes up with ideas. We also got from Carrie writing. We got more insight into what she's been writing, and we come to find out that the story she's writing is definitely about her and Aiden. And the character in the book loses her love after he returns from war. So he returns from war. She was missing him. He's back. He's safe. And so she's so happy for a time. And then ultimately, she still loses him to smallpox, I believe. Some kind of disease. The symbolism there regarding Carrie and Aiden, right? They were apart for so long. They were apart for circumstances that were not war, but still, love is war, they say. And he came back to her. She finally had him back, and then she lost him for another reason. It was really poignant at the end of that chapter that she was discussing with Duncan, where she says this line 3 times. She said, I did everything I could. I did everything I could. Or she did everything she could. 3 times. She did everything she could. She did everything she could. She did everything she could. And I loved how they discussed that literally. Like, they actually discussed the meaning of that repetition and how that could be too much, but also it really conveys a desperate desire of the character in the book, and also Carrie, to come to an understanding, a conclusion about her relationship with Aiden, that she did everything she could. There was no more to do. And then we get our really exciting Carrie moments. Duncan, he saw her, he sees her, she's this intellect, she's this writing partner of his. And then also he gets a glimpse into her closet, and he's immediately like enamored. He is like, there's no judgment. I was worried he was going to see that and start to make fun of her or judge her as superficial. As, you know, as someone who's interested in hair, makeup, and beauty, but also has a very serious career in medicine, I understand that. And I was like holding my breath for him to see her as so frivolous, you know, and say, oh my goodness, like, why are you into all this stuff? Instead, he said that she was like fascinating. He loved that there was this other part of her, like this fashionista who has this crazy shoe collection, and he admired it. He didn't make fun of it. It really landed for me in that moment as a viewer that, like, no, he really sees her. All the men in her life, the shoe thing was important because all the men in her life have kind of tolerated or kind of like just saw it as a cute quirk or not understood it, or in Aiden's case, seemingly just ignored it altogether. But Duncan sees it and he gets it and he loves it together. He just loves the whole thing. And I was happy for her that she's finally interacting with a guy who's like, gets it, you know? He doesn't just think she's cute and quirky and has this cute little shoe fetish. He finds her scintillating, fascinating, layered, Love it. And we've gotten several Carrie-esque moments, her little trots across the cobblestone streets in her 4 and 5-inch heels, which we know would never actually happen in real life. But Duncan invites her to this dinner, and I feel like that was our chance. There was this Vivienne Westwood dress. Charlotte made a big deal about it because it was so fabulous, and where are you wearing this? And Duncan invited her to this publisher's event, and I feel like that was our chance to get the Carrie is back. For episode 9 and 10, they've even done her hair differently. They've made her look much more chic, much more like the version of Carrie I remember from the show. Like she didn't look crisp to me when she was in the throes of the relationship with Aiden. There was always just something off about her fashion, in my opinion. It was her usual quirky self, but it didn't have that round that Carrie's fashion often has. So now we're back. We're back. The bitch is back. Because that Vivienne Westwood number was crazy. Then her hair was perfect. Her makeup. Everything was coming together. I don't know if they intentionally did this, but I'm just saying. The Carrie that we know and love, she showed up to that publisher's dinner. She was grabbing attention as soon as she walked in the door because she is that New York City it girl status, which Duncan, interestingly, did not actually know about her. And that makes me like him more because it's like he's not with her for any other, he's not chasing after her for any other reason except that he finds her fascinating. Love. She walks into the room. Duncan's publisher is like, oh my God, Carrie Bradshaw is here. He's like, what? You know who Carrie Bradshaw is? Interestingly, we find out that the publisher is also Duncan's ex. Messy boots, Duncan, messy boots. But just when I started to get concerned that ruh-roh, this is going to spell conflict for Carrie because she tends to like make too much of a deal about things like this, she totally took it in stride and did not let that derail anything in their moment. Just to let him admit that, yeah, he's a little messy sometimes, dating his publisher, marrying his publisher, but that's him. So she sees him and is not afraid of what she sees. And I love that. They go back to the house and they're flirting on the stoop. This gorgeous flippin' house. Side note, at one point in the episode, I like gasped out loud. I was like, oh my gosh. And my husband comes in the room. He's like, what's wrong? And embarrassingly, I had to admit that I was gasping at the crown molding in the Gramercy house because Duncan went upstairs and we were seeing a long shot of her hallway and the crown molding and the wainscoting and the floor, the design of the hardwood floor in that gorgeous, gorgeous home. I gasped out loud. I like beautiful things. What can I say? But anyway, just reminded me about, they're standing on the stoop of this gorgeous Gramercy home and a flirtation is happening. There's a will they, won't they, and he kind of invites her for a nightcap. She turns him down. And anybody with brains can definitely understand why she would turn him down in that moment. But also the rest of us who are probably cheering this relationship on, fully ship it. We're like, no. So she goes all the way up her stairs, thinks better of it, turns around and runs downstairs. And they have this beautiful little kiss. I do like who she is with him. I really do. I feel that this is the first time that we are treated to seeing Carrie fully realized as Carrie, but also in a relationship with someone who is not expecting her to change a thing. He has not asked her to change a thing. The only thing he asked her to do was put some carpets on upstairs. But I think even that, they gave us a payoff with Duncan to see her love for shoes and the artistry of, shoemaking. And it's like something dawned on him with an understanding of, okay, this is why this lady wears her shoes inside the house, right? So Duncan is seeing her and loving and falling in love seemingly with every bit of her. And she is in turn seeing all of him and falling in love with every bit of him and feeling appreciated and all that. And they have a moment and they're in a bra, and Duncan is undressed and they're letting us know that they've already slept together. So then Duncan starts smoking in bed, which honestly made me cringe because every time I think about people smoking in bed, I think of house fires. So he doesn't have any tragedies happen, but they do have a cute conversation in which it becomes clear that Duncan is definitely leaving New York because his book is finished. He was, remember, only in New York because of writing the book, because he was there to be inspired and be stuck in a space. Writers often do this where they escape to a place and a location and really write a book, focus on the book, bang it out, and then they rejoin civilization when the book is done. Which, sadly for us, means that he's leaving. Or that's his plan, at least. His plan is to return to London, and he kind of has one of those, well, if you're ever in London, conversations with her. On the one hand, I'm sad that that's happening because I don't feel like Carrie's getting enough time to explore what this relationship could mean, and he doesn't seem to be making any kind of suggestion that they carry on long distance, which I understand because long distance relationships are hard and they're both grown, busy people, right? With full lives where they live. So, but I don't know. I'm not ready for the idea that she had this connection with him and it's just going to be over. But also remember her and Alexander. I don't also want her to move to Europe to pursue a man. Like, this version of Carrie, I like. This version of Carrie alone in this big, beautiful house, I would like someone that she can add to her life that isn't going to make her change her life right now. Not at this stage. Just when I thought they were about to leave us on a cliffhanger of like, okay, this will resolve itself next episode. What are they going to do with this relationship, this burgeoning new romance? No, they go right into Carrie's exiting montage of scenes of her living her life beautifully at Gramercy, and it's fall now, so summer's over, the leaves are changing, and she's sitting in the garden and sort of wrapping up her thoughts on it, which makes it seem like it's kind of final and the relationship has come to an end. I don't know how I feel about that. On the one hand, I understand not giving Carrie this cute relationship and wrapping it up with a bow and saying, look, and now she gets Duncan, because then having a man will make her life complete. So there's a part of me that is cheering on leaving her single at the end of this and not with a man, because so much of Carrie's character arc has involved putting a bow on some kind of relationship, either with John or with Aiden or with Alexander or whoever, is so much of her story. And maybe then it is development or character growth for us to leave her out of a relationship, but content. Maybe so. So then came the big announcement that HBO was holding until this episode aired, which is that this will be the final And Just Like That season. They're going to wrap it up with a 2-part season or series finale. And so that will be 12 total episodes as opposed to like 10. As much as I wanted this season to evolve and improve and get better and thinking that it would, it didn't. And so I am less upset about the end of the series than I would have been if it had just been fantastic all the way through and then they hit us with this "we're not coming back" business. Sarah Jessica Parker bids farewell to Carrie after the announcement in a very sentimental Instagram post that I will share with you. And I read it and I got a little choked up because Carrie's a character that, we've all held on to for a very long time and we've all had as a little bit of a friend in our head for a very long time. So I'm sad to let her go too. But she made it clear that this is it for Carrie. They're not going to bring her back in any form, be it a movie or otherwise. And I'm okay with that. But I feel like I would have been less okay with it if they hadn't somewhat tanked the first 3/4 of the show. And that kind of upsets me. I'm okay saying goodbye to the character because they didn't do her justice this season. I'm not okay saying goodbye to the character because I feel like I watched her live a complete life of what I envisioned when I first started watching the show, or because I feel like her story is concluded. Maybe I was being harsh, but the stark contrast between episode 10 and the preceding 8.5 episodes, there's something there. I don't know if it was just the writing or the production, or just a sense of urgency that, we've completely, wasted an entire season. Now we actually have to wrap this up. But yeah, it felt very much to me like they'd given up on the character before this 3rd season even aired. So, and just like that, we are saying goodbye to Carrie Bradshaw for good in these final 2 episodes. I hope there's massive payoff in them since we're not planning to come back and do any kind of reboot. I really hope that they plan to resolve all kinds of stuff for us. I hope that Carrie gets a resolution in her story that is fitting for everything we've seen her go through, including widowhood. I'll never forgive them for that. Unlike the way that I felt about the show all season long, I am actually going to be... Thursday will be appointment television. Ever since The Last of Us ended, really, The Gilded Age has been my only appointment television, but this conclusion is, for me, a can't miss. If they're promising an actual 2-part conclusion, then I am going to tune in and give it the respect it deserves, at least for the first part. So, Thursday this week, part 1 of the 2-episode conclusion of the series. And I feel like, hopefully, from what I'm reading, that means not just the series and Just Like That, but the series like The Life of These Ladies, Sex and the City, the movies, and Just Like That. This is going to be the conclusion. Episode 10, if any indicator, was reason for optimism about these last 2 episodes. Seems like HBO is ready to move on. The actors are ready to move on. And so I hope that they are able to deliver a story that lets the fans move on too. HBO is not known for really great series conclusions. Game of Thrones. So that said, I am cautiously optimistic. They did give us a full 10-episode run and a bonus 2 episodes to wrap things up, so I'm hoping that the writers were very thoughtful about how they're going to leave things. They could have just ended it at episode 10, which would have been not satisfying, but which would have been understandable. The fact that we get 2 more episodes to see what's going on, maybe there'll be a time jump, which would be really great, because if we could see what happens with Miranda, with Brady and the baby, we could see how LTW's hard work pays off, and maybe if we could see a Duncan and Carrie reunion, perhaps Duncan comes back next spring, like who knows. But I'm hoping that there is a little bit of a time jump so that we can really get a good send-off for these characters that we love so much. Okay, that's enough. That's my thoughts. I will come back. After Thursday's episode airs, I will come back and let you know what I think.